This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Also, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Let's start with a couple of headlines, Greg, that stood out to me. First, Jerod Mayo comes out on Sunday after a brutal game against Jacksonville in London and calls his team soft. Then he goes on the Greg Hill Show less than 24 hours later and says, well, we're not soft, we're just playing soft. What's going on with Jerod Mayo and these press conferences, and can he help himself?
No, he really can't. I think Nick, he's getting into it worse and worse, seemingly every week. What he said on Sunday after the game, you just can't say it. And I understand he said that to the players before that. But publicly, he cannot say that. There's nothing worse as a football player than being called soft. And I know he wasn't individually talking about it. And I'm sure, he meant it collectively. Obviously, we're a soft football team because, we can't run the ball. We can't stop the run. We can't cover kicks. I understand all that, but you can't say that publicly. It's yes, you said it to the players and that's fine. And that's one thing. And I also think there's a problem with that. Basically what Jerod needed to do, he needs to take ownership of what's going on with this team. He's the freaking head coach of the team. If his team is soft, if they can't run the ball, if they can't stop the run, if they can't do any of these things, it's on him. If you have a soft football team, as a head coach, you are soft. He needs to come out and say, I'm responsible for this. Obviously, it's not going well. I am going to figure out the answers. I'm going to give them the solutions, and we'll go from there. But, Nick, after watching the film, and to be honest, I had a hard time getting through the defensive film. I was so disgusted with what I saw, and it wasn't – here's what I would say. After watching the film, I would not call any of these guys soft. I wouldn't even use that word because it's not for a lack of effort. It's two things. Number one, they're undermanned. On offense, they're undermanned at the two guard spots. Michael Jordan, who had been a bright spot, was terrible in this game. I don't know why. I don't know if he was sick. I don't know if he was hurt or he just turned into a pumpkin because he really is a backup type guy. That's what he was here. City Stowe into the game was terrible. So when your two guards get their lunches handed to them all game, you're not going to be able to run the ball. Defensively, up front, this has been a criticism that we've had going back to the offseason about not doing more, especially in light of moving on from Lawrence Guy. All right, well, what are you going to do to replace him? Who are you going to bring in? You can't just let it go and bring in all these undersized guys, Jeremiah Farms and Daniel Ekuwale and all this stuff. What happens if Godchow get hurt? What happens if Barmore gets hurt? What are you going to do? And they're getting a little bit exposed, but that's not the issue. So yes, they're undermanned, but the bigger problem to me, Nick, is they have a coaching staff that doesn't know how to come up with solutions. Every team is shorthanded in some area or multiple areas, but it's on the coaches to come up with a plan to say, all right, we're deficient here. This is how we win this week. What I saw on film, just constant gaps. No one's in gaps, Nick. There's not anybody there. Christian Ellis is going out with Ingram. Well, who has that gap then? Nobody has it. The Jags run right through it. There's blown coverages. There's two guys covering people. They looked completely unprepared. They look horribly coached. And you combine all that, that's what happens on Sunday. And to me, it was a rough watch. I was offended for the players. It's on Jerod Mayo and his coaches, and they need to come up with solutions, or else this is going to get worse and worse every week.
Slaughter spoke volumes that Devin McCourty went out publicly on Sunday night and said, quote, "The first thing I think of is toughness isn't a skill set. You don't need to be fast or do anything special to be tough. The second part of that is why, Jerod? Why is this team not tough? When you hear a team isn't tough and they are soft, you think, what is the head coach doing? How is he getting them ready to go? Mayo and that staff have a lot of questions to answer going in the next week. That's Devin McCourty. That's a guy who was friendly with Jerod Mayo, who liked the hire, and he's going out there, national television, saying what he said. And I think that tells us an awful lot. It's the coaching right now. It is absolutely hands down the coaching. We'll get into it a little bit more deeper in a minute. But I did want to ask you about Bill Belichick because, of course, Belichick sees what Mayo said on Sunday, and he's licking his chops to feast on those words. Your thoughts on Belichick defending the team being soft and going after Jerod Mayo the last couple of media appearances?
Yeah, look, I don't love that he doesn't say anything when they win or when they won in week one. Just try to be consistent. If he would have given Mayo and the coaches their flowers after week one, and then he did this, I'd be fine with it. But to do this at this point, I think it reflects poorly on Bill. That being said, I will say, Nick, I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm in the middle of a movie right now. It's like Crimson Tide or Toy Shoulders or something like that. You have the deposed dictator who's been exiled, who's out of the building, but he's sending like messages to his guys, like, if you rise up and there's an insurrection, then, it's just like, that's how I took where he's like calling, John Jones isn't soft and Keon White and Kyle Duggar, like all these guys. And you could just see them all being like perking up they heard the whistle. They heard the siren call from the deposed leader. And they're going to be like, storm the castle or something like that. It's just, the thing is, Nick, we're not even halfway through the season and they're weeks away from the bye week. Like, holy hell.
The Belichick stuff, just a couple quick thoughts. I mean, it's not that he's lying in what he says. Okay. But it is a little bit rich. And look, I understand the history and I appreciate it. We always have to throw the caveat out there because people will lose their minds. He won 6 Super Bowls. I'm well aware, but it is kind of rich. A guy who was like, 9 games or whatever under 500 post Brady is out there just throwing, Mayo under the bus for some things and the team not playing well. It's like, well, Bill, your defense played well last year, but you did have a 4-win season last year. So I don't know how much I'd be puffing out my chest. The other part of it is, the Belichick Saquon Barkley thing. I mentioned this on Twitter. What he said about Barkley during Monday Night Football about, the New York Giants, they don't keep one of their best players in-house because of a couple of $1 million. They go out and pay a guard instead. And that drove me up a wall. And I had people on Twitter who, look, it's my fault. I'm looking for people to use critical thinking on Twitter. That's my fault. That's not their fault. They are who they are. I'm not comparing Jacoby Myers to Saquon Barkley, if anybody is thinking that with no critical part of that element, okay? What drives me crazy is that's so hypocritical from Bill. Like, you let Jacoby Myers walk over $1 million a year when he was your best wide receiver in that room. You decided not to pay DeAndre Hopkins a couple of extra million. That would have brought DeAndre Hopkins onto the team. Instead, you spent that money on giving Devontae Parker, a guy who has now retired, extra money. You sit there and you kind of besmirch the idea of spending money on a guard when you went out and spent a first-round pick on Cole Strange because you completely mismanaged the position, Bill. Like, it's this delusional world that he's living in, that he's able to just throw these barbs out there. And it's like, I get it. I understand Rex Ryan does the same stuff. All former coaches do it, but it just kind of makes me laugh. It's like, do you look in the mirror and see your last 4 or 5 years running the Patriots? Because it certainly wasn't always butterflies and roses there, Bill Belichick. So that's the stuff that kind of irritates me. One last thing. KJ Osborne goes on social media, just shares a message that he had with his agent after the touchdown celebration against the Jaguars, where he does the whole call me motion. Then you have Jalen Polk with the peace sign emoji via social media, which he deleted later. Greg, I'm sure you agree with me, but man, oh man, the wide receivers, they got to calm the hell down with this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And what's interesting, Nick, and I don't know if we talked about this, and I mentioned it on TV on Sunday night, but I go back to a conversation I had with somebody in the offseason, an NFL source who knows Tyler Hughes, who's the chief wide receivers coach. Tyquan Underwood is the assistant wide receivers coach. And they were looking at some of the people they brought in, especially Javon Baker, who we all know had issues. Remember, we talked about, I wrote that column on the character risks that this front office took more than normal. And, Jalen Polk, I was surprised that somebody, and I couldn't get specifics, and I readily admitted that, but there was a front office executive who said, yeah, Polk's kind of got a red flag too, but I couldn't figure out what that was. I mean, maybe is it maturity? Now in hindsight, maturity, dealing with adversity, but that NFL source was talking about the wide receiver room, and he's like, this should be interesting. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, Tyler Hughes, wonderful man, family man. He's, from what I understand, what the source told me, he's Mormon, which, fine. I don't care what religion you are, but they were just using it as an example of like, he's very religious, very, straight and narrow and stuff like that. They were like, should be interested to see how he handles that room. That room is a little bit out of control, but this is why you bring in a Tyquan Underwood, who was a player, who, is an impeccable character, who's, in my opinion, is somebody that these guys can look up to. But they got to get that straightened out because it's a freaking disaster.
We'll get to Drake Maye in the offense, but quickly, Greg, tell the fine people about Prize Picks.
Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. I didn't hit this week, mostly because Demario Douglas, all of a sudden decided to get sick and, barely played. But like I told people, I said, I picked it wrong on Hunter Henry. I said, go over on the fantasy points. And that turned out to be correct because he was a monster in this game. Looks like he's got a good rapport with Drake Maye going forward. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
What'd you think of Drake Maye's performance, Greg?
I was impressed with Drake Maye in this game. And this is an example of why you have to be honest when you're grading these players so you could see where they are making progress. And for all the people who got mad at me last week because I gave Drake Maye a C- and he didn't grade out well for me, I do not take that back at all. And in fact, Drake's performance on Sunday reinforced exactly what I thought in week 1. I thought he was much improved. I only had him leaving the pocket early once. Look, was it perfect? No, he still has some accuracy issues. I thought his decision-making was better. I love he's so straight line in terms of his emotions. He can handle adversity. He can handle curveballs. He can handle the bullets from the other team, which is great. And it's only his second start, and he's doing this. The throw to Kayshon Boutte was just incredible, a big-time throw. He cut down on his errors. Yeah, he had 2 near interceptions, and which I marked him down for because those should have been interceptions. But for the most part, I thought he played really well. And in fact, I would go so far as I thought with what was going on in the game. And then this is another example, Nick, of the coaching staff not adjusting, not having solutions to what's going on in this team, especially in real time. I would have let Drake sling it around, especially in the second half with what was going on. I didn't have on rewatch. I didn't have a huge problem with what Alex Van Pelt did, other than that one drive with the hasty run for -1, the Hunter Henry screen for -4. That was a horrible series. But the big problem was they only had 1 possession in the third quarter. And by the time they got possessions in the fourth quarter, the game was largely over. So I was very impressed with Drake Maye. I would say I would have him in the B range in this game, but This is what you want to see. Nick, we talked last week. I said he was making plays. You want to see him maintain that or get a little bit more? Made a few more plays in this game. Check mark. You wanted to see the mental errors, those decisions, the minus plays go down. Check mark. And he took care of the ball better in some respects. So to me, I thought it was a great step forward for Drake Maye. Showed a lot of improvement.
It's the adversity and how he handles it stood out to me again for the second straight week. You've got no run game, absolutely zero run game. Your offensive line is shuffling again because you lose Layden Robinson early in the game. Your best receiver, who would have been an absolute great matchup against this Jaguars defense. Jaguars, the worst defense in football heading into the weekend against slot receivers. Now you have a limited Pop Douglas, the one guy that you feel like, all right, we can get the ball to him, and he did great last weekend. So limited Pop, no run game, shuffling of the offensive line. First game in London, your internal clock is a little bit off. All that adversity stuff for him to overcome it is impressive. As far as AVP, I got two problems with AVP, actually three. Number one, from the scripted plays to the rest of the game, there's a huge difference. Screams to me of a guy that goes into the game with time to plan and prepare for the first 12 to 15 plays and has a clear idea how he wants to utilize his talent, make the most of his quarterback situation, et cetera, et cetera. Then when the game is, as you said, real time and he has to adjust within the game, I think he's been mostly brutal. I thought on Sunday against the Jaguars, look, I understand the run game was an issue because of the offensive line. My problem with Van Pelt is that he didn't do anything creatively to get the run game going. He kept doing the same thing over and over and over again for the most part. I'll give you an example. There weren't any toss plays. There weren't any pitch plays. There weren't any jet sweeps. There weren't any designed runs for Drake Maye that I saw. There weren't bubble screens to wide receivers saying, hey, look, we can't run the football on early downs, so let's replace the run game by throwing a bubble screen like we did to Kendrick Bourne against the Texans to try to get some good momentum. There was absolutely none of that. And that's on him. Like, you keep running into a brick wall and you expect the brick wall to crumble. It's not going to crumble. So do something. How about pony formation with both Gibson and Stevenson in the backfield? How about you try? I know he had at least one snap, maybe a couple snaps in the pistol formation when you have the running back directly behind Drake Maye. How about doing that? Just the lack of the idea of we're going against the Jaguars, who have been god awful against mobile quarterbacks, and you don't really, call any designed runs for the quarterback. That's an egregious mistake by the offensive coordinator, especially when you're trying to run the football and you can't get it going. How about you use your quarterback to get going? His knee was obviously fine. He was off the injury report. He was scrambling around. So why don't you throw a couple of designed runs by the quarterback at the defense to try to shake them up a little bit? It's like, no, we're just going to continue to do what we do, and it's not working. It's insane to me. It's absolutely insane. And the final thing I'll say is lack of creativity, Greg. I mean, we talked about it before the game. This defense in Jacksonville is very undisciplined. Yep. No trick plays. No nothing. No. Again, outside, I thought the first couple drives, and I tweeted this, I thought they were really good. And I thought Van Pelt on the first third down of the game, he actually helped both tackles on the play. Good job, Alex. Good job. But then after the first 12 to 15 plays, they fall off a cliff. And he looks like a dude who's playing Madden for the first time, searching through the playbook, having no idea what he's going to do. So it's an issue, and he better get better over the next couple of weeks because I'm about my wit's end with Alex Van Pelt. But there's more, because the defense also has to be talked about, and DeMarcus Covington. But first, Greg will tell you about game time.
NBA season is upon us. And by the time you probably listen to this, the Celtics have already raised the banner, and Knicks and going crazy, raising his own mini banner.
Celtics hat, Celtics shirt today. I'm ready, Greg. Banner night, baby.
And I'm sure at some point this season, Nick's going to be there in person, because to really experience the NBA, you got to be there in person. All the sights, sounds, celebrities, all that stuff, green teamers, and you got to get to Game Time. Game Time is the best way to get to the game. They have a feature called Game Time Picks, filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. They have panoramic views right there from your seat, so you can check it out. That's a must for me. I won't buy a ticket without it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. And remember, we told you, if you want to go see the Celtics maybe in Washington, really good deals on there. Just take the train down. Go see the Celtics, whoop them, and then come back home on the train. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
We know the problems on defense. They can't stop the run, and they got almost no pressure on Trevor Lawrence in London. Greg, what could DeMarcus Covington do? As you sit there, you talked about real-time lack of adjustments. Just give the people out there listening, watching, an idea as to what Covington could try to do to try to fix some of these problems.
Well, the first thing that I would do, Nick, and I think we sort of talk about this on offense, but they need to simplify what they're doing. I know they're getting down there in depth. I mean, for example, they're getting run on, and Marte Mapu's out there like faking, like I'm going to be here, but then dropping into coverage. Like, what the hell are we doing? Go play freaking defense. Just get in the 4-3 or the 3-4 or what have you, and just go play football. And when that was happening, the 17, 18 straight runs, as a coach, Jerod Mayo needs to get on the horn and say, look, enough's a freaking enough. All right. Get in goal line. If they want to throw it, they throw a touchdown. I don't care. They ain't running anymore on us. There are things that you can do. You can shoot gaps. You can call run blitzes. You can get into the bear front, the 46 and say, this is where we're going to play. And like, if you have confidence, this is what I don't get. Like, with their cover guys that are good, Gonzalez and the Jones boys. And we've talked about this before this. Like, why don't they get into more, zero coverage and just start sending people? The biggest problem, Nick, with this team is this coaching staff has no answers. They have no solutions to what's going on. And it's leaving the team doubly short. I mean, and look, Mayo is responsible. I mean, he should be insulted. He should be embarrassed that it's the biggest problem on this team right now because of what Drake Maye is doing is the defense. That it's the defense. It's the middle of the defense. The defense is his baby. He used to be an inside linebacker. Like, that's his position. And now they are getting embarrassed because of it. And all Mayo does is point at the players and call them soft. Like, it's not going to go over well.
Evan Lazar wrote about this, but their base personnel is getting murdered, and they continue to stay in their base personnel a ton. What are we doing? What are we? Covington was supposed to be the coordinator that was ready for this. What are we doing? I know you got to run to Felger and Maz in a couple minutes here, Greg, but let me ask you this. First, quickly, yes or no, do you know if Jerod Mayo has been involved with the defensive side going into like last weekend, first 6-7 weeks of the season? Has he been involved more on the defensive end, or has he been doing the whole CEO thing?
I don't know that answer. I will know more by the end of the week, I think, but my inclination is to say that he's been taking the scenic route, that he has been contracting out everything on this team, has not dug into the details, and that's what we're seeing on the field. I mean, because look, Nick, we talked about it after the Dolphins game. He said, there's no question we're tough. Defense and special teams played well enough to win. And we talked about it. I said, what the hell game is he watching? They just got run on by the Dolphins. The Dolphins ran 7 straight times to score against you with Snoop Huntley at quarterback. And they played crappy on special teams. They played crappy on defense. Like, he's not, he doesn't know what's going on with his team. And now 3 weeks later, now he's calling them soft. No, if you knew what was going on, if you weren't just, I don't know. I mean, does he watch the film? If you cared about your team, you would have said enough's enough right there. Like, he would have been real about his team and gotten it fixed then. He has no solutions. That's why they're a mess. Is it time for him to take more responsibility on the defensive 100%. Side and give McAdoo an AVP and say, that's your offense? I'm now going to be more involved defensively. Yep. He needs to be involved in everything, but if he wants to get fired, he'll keep doing the CEO report. And I do not think that he is assured of year 2. It better get better by the end of the season, or he could be in trouble. So
interesting.
That means if he needs to step in, he needs to step in.
That's interesting because I've gone off the thought of Robert Kraft will never get rid of him after 1 year because he has way too much to prove and the whole Belichick stuff. But that's interesting. All right, before we get to Greg, who stood out and who didn't, check out BSJ, $50 for the year. Bedard, Giardi, they do a great job with the Patriots coverage. Of course, Corrales gets it cranking with the Celtics tonight. You also want to download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS, get $50 instantly when you play 5, and then take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Again, that code is CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Who was good? Who wasn't, Greg?
Let's go 3 up on offense. Hunter Henry, thought he was great. Drake Maye, number 2. Demontre Jacobs, PFF killed him with 4 pressures. I didn't have much for him in this game. I also thought Ben Brown was good. Not good on offense. I mean, the whole defense you can put in there. I mean, the linebackers, Tavai, Christian Ellis, Devon Godchow, Marte Mapu, they stunk. City So and Michael Jordan were horrible. And, of course, you have Jalen Pope.
It's like Groundhog's Day, this podcast this season so far. Hopefully it all changes. Greg and I will be back later in the week. He's going to run to Felger Maz. Until next time, be well.